All right, I'm going to let y'all in on a sneaky little tip here, and I will tell you how it almost killed me, a 150-inch deer on public in Pennsylvania. So the feature I'm talking about, or little sneaky tip, is the Lidar feature that Spartan Forge dropped on their mapping app. It reveals the forest floor in a way that is unmatched by any other app that with their topo maps, anything like that at all. And the example I'll give is, in Pennsylvania, I was using the LiDAR feature and was finding these old well roads, just these little high spots that were overgrown, and every one of them was littered with rub lines and scrape lines. And I almost killed a 150-inch deer my first sit. Got a lot of good deer on camera in these areas, and it was the LiDAR feature that Spartan Forge had that was revealing them, and you would not find that on any other competing app. So if you haven't tried it, I would encourage y'all to download Spartan Forge and check out the LiDAR feature. If you want a discount, go to spartanforge.ai and use code SEEK, SEEKONE, SEEK1 at your checkout, and you'll get a 20% discount. All right, guys, it's Christmas time, and Vortex Optics has you covered, whether you're shopping for yourself or for somebody else. On their website, vortexoptics.com, they've got some really good apparel. My personal favorite right now is their new line of sunglasses. They are more affordably priced, but a solid set of sunglasses. If you're interested in their optics, go to eurooptic.com, and if you enter code SEEK10 at checkout, you will get a discount on all of their optics. Also, for vortexoptics.com, with the apparel side, use code SEEK20 at checkout, and you can also get a discount code there. Christmas shopping, Vortex has you covered, fellas and women and everybody listening. All right, guys, let's talk portable speakers. Turtlebox is making the best one on the market right now. Turtlebox is making the loudest, most durable, fully waterproof speaker on the market. It's got a 26-plus hour running life out of one charge, and it's got a true 6x9 marine-grade speaker in each unit. One of the cool features of these units is that you can actually link two of them together to get a full surround sound feel whenever you've got the boys out or you're hanging out and having a good time. We actually used this feature at our Doe Day event when we hosted a bunch of you guys to come in. We had two turtle boxes rolling, both of them playing music, and it filled the room up. It was actually really, really cool. So if you guys are interested in checking out Turtlebox, go to their website at turtleboxaudio.com. You can pick up a unit directly from their website. And if you'd like to see one in the store, you can check out their store locator feature and find a retailer near you. turtleboxaudio.com. Y'all go check them out. All right, guys, welcome to the Seek One podcast. Beau, special guest.
Yeah.
We're going to do one on your channel right after this, right?
Yep. Yeah, we're going to start off with the lesser of the two, and then we'll work into the finale
That's
later.
fair. Leave the best for last.
What do you mean you talked second? Oh, we're talking about podcasts.
Podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotcha.
What do you want to talk about on your podcast?
On the one with you?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about your Ohio deer.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Lot-
You got him. You're going to let him talk about the Ohio deer?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
He must
Lots
like
to
you.
talk about.
I know. I didn't even ask. He offered it.
I did?
Wow.
I didn't even want to go out, and I figured that that was special, and he wanted to do it himself, and he's like, I want you to have it, Beau. I said,
I did not say that.
Throughout my long and storied career in the military, my one thing I think I did well. Well, there are two things I think I did well. The first one was collect a paycheck. And then the second thing I did well was give people advice. That was my job, was being an advisor to military officers.
Generals, right?
To general officer when I retired. And Lee always calls me. And I call him and ask him for advice too, but I always think his advice kind of sucks.
It does.
But it's good. You need those multimodal analysis. But he called me and talked to me about doing everyone's hitting me up about the podcast on this buck, and everybody wants me to come over here and do this and blah, 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 blah. I was like, dude, you own a podcast. You have a podcast that people listen to, and you have a show. Like that should be the first two contact points for everybody in that deer and your work. You know what I mean? You're not going to go do all the cool stuff, and then it would be like, Michael Jordan winning the NBA Finals and then going and interviewing on the Seattle Supersonics.
Well, I thought you were my PR agency, and you were supposed to talk him into it with mine, but I thought you might have helped, but apparently you didn't.
No, I told him not to talk to anybody about it until he went on his own podcast. Like, I literally was just looking at an ad that we're running on Meta on Google. He recorded an ad for us about our Eagle Eye feature, and everyone in there is, oh yeah, the last one he just killed, he paid money for, and $30,000 and blah 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 blah. And I was like, these people are all turds. Not all of them are saying that, but a fair amount of them are.
Yeah, but it's par for the course. Like that's and we can save that for your podcast, but just for the sake of natural progression of conversation, like I don't expect any different. It's never been any different. And you can go back to the earliest years, like the very first years before Sequom was even like a thing. And it was the same thing. Like we killed a deer that we called Zeus, and it was the first 200-inch deer I ever killed out of Atlanta. And there was so much drama around that deer because you have a lot of other people hunting the same deer, and there was like a fabricated story that some dude ran to Facebook and posted, and it was like there was so much drama surrounding that deer. So it's like this has always been the same.
Yeah.
This is never the progression has always been the same. Like,
I was on a podcast,
never not changed.
The Bow Hunter Chronicles podcast, and he was asking. I don't remember the question, but it was something along the lines of like, "What do you tell people who want to become hunters or get into hunting?" Or I said, "Well, the first question you have to ask yourselves, who want to be successful?" He said, "I should quantify it that way." And I said, "The first question you should ask yourself is, do you really want to be a successful whitetail hunter, or do you want to look like you're a successful whitetail hunter?" Because it's two very different courses. The former being, if you want to look like one, just go, put on the Sitka jacket and run around and talk about your bow and all the things you're going to kill and all these deer you're seeing on camera, and then kill a spike. And and then if you really want to do it, all of the door knocking, the permission, the running of cameras, the analysis, the journaling, the patience, letting the deer walk, becoming a steward of the woods, understanding that it's more about the path of hunting than it is the success of hunting. You don't want to get into all of that. You're talking about a very different thing that I think only maybe 2 or 3% of people who actually engage in the sport, in any sport or any domain, actually get into. And the reason I say that is because when the other 97% encounter the 3% and see how they're successful, they have to rationalize why that person's successful and why I'm not. And the easiest way to do that is just to say he's cheating, he's a liar, he's no good, because then they don't have to go out and actually do the work. They just get to complain about someone else and feel good about themselves. And when people encounter ideals, that's the first thing they do. We threw Christ up on a cross because he was the perfect man. Why? Because no one wanted to deal with a perfect person. And that's how it goes for people. And I'm not saying Lee is Christ, believe me. But what I am saying, what I am saying is when someone really, really excels at something, the easiest thing for people to do is to hate them because it helps them sleep at night.
Mm-hmm. See, that's why me and my dad here, why we hunt the big woods. We don't want 200-inch deer, and then everyone's saying that. So that's why.
That's why Joe just kills a 180-inch deer. And
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Which is like a 240-inch deer anywhere else.
I'm assuming that y'all do y'all get drama with deer up here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and let me preface this. We're with Bill Thompson, Spartan Forge. I called it Spartan Fudge, totally on accident on camera, but it will definitely be in the episode.
Sticking.
Beau and Beau Martonik, PA. Well, I mean, I don't want to say you're like a PA specialist because you do a lot, but y'all are from PA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're up here hunting, and then so just kind of like introducing everybody officially. And Beau's got a podcast, Eats Meets West. Y'all check it out.
East meets West.
I said East Meets West.
You said Eats.
Anyways, so we'll do a podcast on Beau's channel after this, and we'll talk more about that deer if y'all want to hear it.
It's hotter than a $2 pistol in here.
It is hot, and we just did an episode on ours talking more about the Ohio deer. But question to y'all is like, I mean, is there drama around these deer up here? Because I think what makes for the recipe for drama is when you have a lot of people hunting the same deer. And that's when, obviously like rumors get spread, stories get told, and it's like blah, 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 all the jawing. Do y'all experience that up here or not really?
You hear it. I mean, and I don't know if it's a lot of people hunting the same deer, but it's more of, I think, a jealousy. If I see somebody shot a big buck and somebody goes and says, oh, they did it this way and, not the right way, whatever, it's like, I don't know that person. I don't make an opinion. But yeah, you hear that stuff.
Yeah, it's more of if someone's consistently successful, they've got to be doing something wrong, more so than it is like
Could be their work.
specific deer, just because there's just so much woods and stuff. It's not. I don't know. I feel like I haven't really dealt with anything or him that over a specific deer of like drama about it. More so just in totality of like, oh, those guys must be baiting, or those guys must be doing this, they must be doing that to do it, versus just putting in a lot of time and work and sacrificing everying else.
That's the main thing that I think like you just can't shortcut is time. Like you just can't. It's just not possible. Like being able to put in like time and just like I've always just like kind of chipped away, at like deer I've tracked down. It's like every day, even if it's just like little baby steps, like trying to progress. Even if it's just figuring out where the deer's not. If I go door knocking and it's like, oh, this place is being hunted, this place is being hunted. Like I'm kind of still figuring out, okay, like there's pressure here. How is that going to make that deer react? And so, that was and I'll talk about it in your podcast, but that was sort of how I figured out where this Ohio deer was like every day I was not getting new access and new places to put cameras. It was just like, I was just figuring out where pressure was and where it wasn't. And it was sort of helping me sort of formulate like what makes sense for this deer in my head. Mm-hmm. But it's time, like that you just cannot beat and replace like the time that you can put into this stuff.
Yeah.
So
and that's why I don't judge people who do like, people will, whether it's having a farm, buying land, or just paying $10,000 for a tag to go down to Texas. People will find a way to talk smack about anyone who's successful in any capacity. But at the end of the day, when someone like a CEO of a company, I know of someone, and I can't say his name, but I'll tell you guys after, who is in charge of one of the most successful computer companies in the world, and he's an avid hunter. He never stops thinking about hunting. He does not have the time to go out and spend a week running cameras, and he doesn't have the time for it. So he'll pay $10,000 to go kill a buck. But when I was talking to him about it, in the final analysis, it's if you have the 150, 200 hours. Let's just take it this way: Joe Martonik does something for a living, and he gets paid $7,500 an hour to do his job, right? There could be a point where you have to keep working your job, and now you can't go scout and do the deer.
Right.
But now you have money in the bank. So now you're just saying, I'm not going to be able to scout for the big 180 this year. I'm going to go pay for a tag and go down to Texas and kill a 180 because I want to kill a 180. And then you go and do that, and then someone will be like, oh, look at Joe. He's blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, he's just money is just an abstraction of our time, and we get paid for our time. So if someone's going to go pay to kill a big buck, it's like, okay, what's the difference in exchange of value? He had to earn that money, and now he's going to go use it. Or he takes the time off, and he goes out in the field, and he's still burning money. Mm-hmm. You still can attach a price tag to that deer. I'm not advocating that I'm going to go out and start, paying for tags tomorrow. But all I'm saying is these are all vectors for people just to complain about other people's success. And you said it in the beginning there, which is why I wanted to podcast with you so much. It's people's choice, and I don't have an opinion of that person. I don't know that guy. I don't know his backstory. I don't know what's going into this. He killed a big deer. Congrats.
Each is their own.
Yeah, to each their own. And I'm moving on, and I'm going to focus on what I got going on.
Make somebody happy. Let them.
Yeah.
That's their own path. And hey, I don't judge.
And that's Lee's.
Judge.
Besides his instincts and his surgically implanted horseshoe that he's got up his
it's there. I'm not
fourth point of contact. He's got all the time in the world because his living is deer.
And he goes all that money to have the helicopters bring him in.
Bring him in
that
too.
Helps.
Yeah.
That helps.
And he does that by selling pictures of his feet online.
But that's why the helicopter. What?
And he gets that by selling pictures.
Yeah,
of
I
his
do
feet
that.
online. I went right over your head.
That's
there.
a secret life. You're not supposed to be telling people about that. But that's why we made fun of the helicopter thing so much, was because it like some of the rumors got so outlandish that it's like you can't help but laugh at some of this stuff. And so that's where like the helicopter thing kind of caught fire, was just like, something so ridiculous, but at the same time it's so ridiculous, but these were legitimate allegations, like legitimate, like people were calling into the game wardens and were 100% convinced that I was flying deer in from high fences from other states.
I talked to a guy at WTF at a bar who was convinced that happened. He didn't know who I was. Oh, I had
The
a
bus
guy,
stop guy.
the bus stop guy.
This is such.
I had a guy at our bus stop where I dropped my daughter at school.
Have
every
y'all heard
morning.
this story?
No.
Oh my
man.
gosh, this is so
Should I tell
funny.
it?
Yes, yeah. Tell the bus stop story, and then
so-
we'll keep rolling.
This guy lives kitty corner across from me at my house, and I walk my daughter. I work from home, so I get to walk my daughter to the bus. It's 100 yards from my house, and I'm wearing a Seek One hoodie one morning, and he goes, "Oh, you like whitetail hunting?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I knew exactly who this guy was. He lives kitty corner from me. He still lives there. He's got a keep hammering sticker in the back of his truck, and every type of optic you could have, stickers all over stuff. Whatever, live your life. And he's 5'1", maybe 130 pounds, soaking wet. You can picture this guy in your mind. He's got doilies on his jeans. The doilies like your grandma used to put the lamps on. And he's got the tattoos and stuff. You don't know what I'm talking about?
No.
A doily?
Like
I know he's talking about like ATA jeans that they used to call.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay,
He's got all that stuff,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I like the Seek One guys, and he's like, hey, you know that Lee guy? He pays for his bucks, right? And I was like, I didn't know that. And he goes, oh yeah, man. He like I have friends who said that he will offer somebody $30,000 to hunt their lawn. And I was like, wow. I was like, my first question was like, how does he afford to do anything if all of these places that he's hunting? Like if he's tracking a buck, he's got to knock on like 10 doors. And he's like, well, he probably gives each one like $5,000. But then whoever he kills the buck on their land, he gives them $30,000. It's like, wow, that's crazy. I didn't even think about that. And I said, I just thought he knocked on doors. And he goes, yeah, and so my wife's standing there with me, and she's like looking at me like, are you going to tell this guy that you were just with him last weekend? And I'm not saying anything. Like, I'm not at all. So he goes, yeah, did you see that buck you killed last year? Like, you're going to tell me that buck was just around in people's yards? And then he showed up, knocked on the door, and killed it? I'm like, yeah, that sounds like the story to me. I mean, that's what they're saying. There's enough people out there. He's got 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Like, if he wasn't doing it that way, people would know. He's like, yeah, they do know. Just no one talks about it. I was like,
No, apparently we have people sign. Every person we have sign.
oh, yeah, signing NDAs. He did say that. And so, anyway, this is right before he killed that buck last year, like the Ohio one, which Kimbo, right before he killed Kimbo. So, but week goes by or 2 weeks or whatever it was. And
So you didn't say anything at this point?
no, heck no.
Okay.
Well, my wife asked me
I think
when we were walking
I
away.
just killed the deer in Kansas or something.
Yeah, you just killed that one in Kansas. Well, I'm walking away, and my wife's like, are you not going to tell this guy that you're friends with Lee or that, like, Drew married us? I'm like, no. Why would I do that? Like, this
Takes
is
all the fun out
This
of
is
it.
going to get as good as it can get. Like, I just let him keep going. I was like, the best part will be when Lee shows up one weekend to come hunt a Virginia buck or something like that with me, and I invite them over, and Lee's in the kitchen. That's how this culminates. So the next, like, 2 weeks later, I'm walking out, and I've got my daughter, holding her by the hand, wife with me. We're walking to the bus stop. From, like, 100 yards, which is where the bus stop is from my house, I see him, and he's like, what? What now? What do you think now? And I'm like, what is he talking about right now? My wife's like, he must be talking about Kimbo. Because he had just killed Kimbo 2 or 3 nights before.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking towards him. He's like, yeah, right, yeah. That dude was just walking around. They didn't fly it in. No one paid tens of thousands of dollars. It was just in someone's backyard. And Lee Ellis just shows up and knocks on a door and goes in the backyard and kills him. And so the backstory here is I tell all of the adults in our town that we live in that I blow up bridges for a living. So whenever they ask me what I do, I'm always like, I blow up bridges. And they're like, what? And I'm like, like when there's bridge deconstruction, they need a new bridge or something like that. A lot of times the safest way to get rid of the bridge is to detonate it. So I do controlled detonation on bridges. And
I would love to just follow him around for like a
They always look really confused when I say that because I can talk a lot about shape charges, explosive shape charges, Semtex, all of these types of things because from breaching classes that I took in the military. So he goes, this is the best part. He goes, Bill, the bridge blower upper just thinks that Lee Ellis walks into a house and knocks on the door and there's just a 230-inch deer walking around in the backyard. And like the other guys are all laughing and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's what I think. And he's like, it just existed. It was just there. And then Lee shows up and just kills it. And that's Seek One. And I'm like, this guy's really invested in hating Lee.
You got to have Lee walk your daughter to the bus.
Yeah, I know, right? And
I should knock on his door and be like, "Hey,
can I hunt here?
yeah, can I hunt here?
build the bridge.
I have
you
$1,000 for
You got a helicopter pad out back?
show up with a suitcase, like a leather suitcase. I am prepared to offer you this if I can hunt your backyard.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if you go to certain areas of the country and door knock, it is about money. Like, it is, like I've spent 2 seasons in Kansas now. And it's like most of the people and properties you talk to, it's like, it's leased or they're wanting money because it's such a money game in a lot of these places. So, a lot of these farms and like more of your stereotypical like hunting properties, it's pretty normal today to now have leases or pay money for trespass fee, whatever. But the places that we're knocking are not those farms. It's like 1 acre piece that Miss Betty owns, like a little 2 acre piece, 3 acre, 5 acre. It's like, and there's hundreds of these places. So it's like, if this person says no, or just go to the next one. And, so that, like, we're not,
did you talk about the nature of the place where you killed Kimbo? Like, it was
drug
addled.
The last podcast that we did, I told that,
so
and I'll tell it on both.
Somebody who's like, there's people, drug addicted people in the back. There's homeless people around. Like, these are not yards. Like, it's a 1.2 acre yard. And someone's like, you want to hunt around here? Like, are you armed? Have you told the cops? Like, there are drug addicts behind the house.
A lot of people we ask have never been asked. And so it's a lot of their first interaction with the hunter. And again, you get reactions from all ends of the spectrum, but I think that's just like, if you were to go door knock for your first time and you're door knocking on farms and places that is historically hunted a lot, like, you're gonna get into the lease game without question. But the suburban game and most of the stuff that we've done to this point is just, it's been different. It hadn't been that. But so kind of moving on from there, like, I'm kind of on the back end of, killing a deer like that and dealing with a bunch of drama and stuff like that. And I really just took a fresh look at what do I want to do the rest of the year? Like, I can do, from a hunting perspective, like I can, it's a blank slate. Like, I never thought I'd be done, with what I wanted, the target bucks I was after in October. So I was just like, what do I want to do? Like, what would excite me the most? And, you had mentioned coming up here to hunt PA, and like, we've been up here a couple times. The first time we were just coming to hang out, we didn't hunt. The second time we came up and did deer drives with you guys during gun season. And I was like, man, that was some of the most fun, like, that I've had deer hunting. Just the camaraderie, like being in camp. We're in Johnny Stewart's place. He's always been gracious enough to host us here. And it's like, there is no, there's always like, competition or being competitive, but there's no backstabbing here. It's like everybody's on the same, everybody wants everybody to win. It's like everybody's sharing info and like helping out. It's not like, hey, stay out of my spot, or like people are getting pissed off at each other. It's just like such a brotherhood of just like deer camp. And it's just like, it's so enjoyable, like to have been in that environment. Like, y'all have had such a special thing going on up here in PA for so long, and it's like just going to y'all's camp and seeing all the pictures and like all the history there and like the family heritage and all that stuff. It's just like a very, very special thing, and I got to be a small part of that, just to get a glimpse of that for a minute, doing the deer drives and stuff. And like, so I was asking myself, what would I enjoy doing? I was like, and Bill had mentioned that the timing was right. I was like, I want to go back to PA. And I want to bow hunt. And it's funny, we were doing deer drives, and I this is probably an interesting topic to talk about, but you can kind of take over from what I'm about to talk about.
Yeah, so this is typical for Lee, as far as we're going, and we got, hundreds of thousands of acres of just big woods, some mountainous, some somewhat flat, but just big timber, endless timber. And we see a buck. We
were just driving home one night.
Driving home one night, and we see a buck in someone's yard, and it like butts up against public, and he's like,
and it's in the middle of nowhere. This isn't like in a town. It's just like literal middle of nowhere.
I want to check out that piece behind there. Have you ever checked that out? I was like, no, man, like that's not really. I like to find like away from stuff, and like
lost.
there's so many places to go where there's a way, and there's houses here, and there's roads, and like like when I say house, I mean there's not many, but there's a few there.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, let's go check it out, and we did, and we ended up bumping that deer across the road because a couple guys came down and saw it go across, and we found some really good sign
There was
there.
good sign in there.
And you've been talking to me for 2 years about going back there. He'd be like, I kind of want to go up and put a camera in there and check it out. Like I really want to come hunt that place, and like it just cracked me up because it's just like somewhere, you know, growing up in Pennsylvania my whole life and hunting places. It's just not somewhere that I would typically look at to go. But in Lee Ellis fashion, you know,
And there's rumors of a really big deer there now this year, right?
I'm like, that makes sense. I said that makes 100%
But
sense.
that's what I've learned. This is what's fascinating to me, is the name of the game, whether it's suburban, rural, anywhere in between, has always been these deer are trying to find the voids. They're trying to find where the pressure isn't, and they're masters at it. Like in the suburbs, it will fascinate you when you finally figure out like where a certain buck has been. And honestly, a lot of times we never figure it out. We just never know. They crawl out of holes, you know. But it will fascinate you when you finally do learn something about like, oh, this is where that deer has been hiding. And it makes sense because it's like it's never been hunted. It's impossibly been hunted. It's just like one of the holes, one of the forgotten about places. Sometimes it's real obvious, big piece of property that can't be hunted. Sometimes it's a small little tiny place that's just a nook and cranny that like the deer's never been bothered there. But they're masters at finding those voids of like where they'd never been messed with. And it's the same thing out here. I feel like, and y'all are way better at this than I am, but like from what I've experienced so far, and I've only been here, I think this is the third day I've been up here, and this is the first time I've ever like scouted, just like hitting places, and like trying to, you know, figure stuff out. Is like, you know, I kind of came into it with the mentality, which was I think different than probably most people that would tackle coming out here. Is I was specifically looking for stuff close to the road because I feel like there's a kind of like a buffer zone where people want to go far enough where they feel like they're getting away or going a little bit further than the average guy. But then I feel like the close stuff gets oftentimes like really ignored and overlooked. And so like I wanted to just focus on that, like the close, smaller areas like that. And obviously when you go far enough, you'll get away from it all. But that was kind of my approach, and I felt like it was a little bit different than what your normal dude would come in, and we found some like real good stuff that we're excited to hunt starting tomorrow. But how much of y'all's style is just like finding where the pressure is and avoiding it, and like do y'all see the deer relate to that pretty heavily?
To get to the older class deer, without a doubt. I mean, the ones that don't get old and haven't found that spot, or people are, you know, found their hiding spot or whatever. But yeah, you get the older class deer. They get old that age because they have these little pockets. They have these little seclusion areas that were overlooked areas that people haven't found yet, or haven't bothered them much yet.
Yeah, I think you find that balance here in PA too, because like I think Beau can attest to this. I definitely have spots that are like 2-3 mile hikes where, you know, you've got water to the south where it's inaccessible, and to the north there's like a trail system. But the way that 95% of people would get in there, like I told Beau, like when you come in to help me trail this buck, it was like a year or two ago.
Yeah, last year.
Was it last year?
Yeah.
It was like 7 years ago.
Is that where you killed that buck there?
Just he was just to the
different place.
Well, it's the same place, but anyway, it's just on a different part of the ridge.
Yeah.
To get it, if you go in there and you just take the quickest hiking trail, you're alerting all of the bucks that you're coming in. And I feel like the people who would park in the parking lot with me, I was like, what time are they getting in there? Okay, I literally sat out there the first 2 mornings and was looking at what time people were heading in. I'm like, okay, these guys are heading in between 6 and 7 o'clock. I need to be on the stand at 5. So I need to be out here at 4, take my hour hike in, hour and a half hike in. And then when all those people start coming, then they're pushing everything up and over the ridge. So in that case, you're patterning people and you're walking a long ways. But then I was telling Harry, who's been hunting with me this week, there's 2 spots where I've been going and looking at, or one spot that I've been hunting where it's less than 400 yards 350 yards or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's super overlooked. Like, you would never think in a million years that there would be deer here. And the guys that are parking near us, and there are a ton of trucks parking near us and people hunting, I know where they're going up to these ridges, a couple miles in and stuff like that. But it creates these little pockets like you're talking about where a guy would be like, "You're not killing a deer 300 yards."
They go right past it.
Yeah, they'll walk right past it and keep going.
Like that. I mean, that's something I've definitely learned a lot from my dad, and also Johnny, because I'd get frustrated sometimes, and there'd be people, in places. I'm like, man, there's people in there hunting deer, and Johnny'd say to me, "Don't worry about hunting people." He's like, "You're hunting deer." He's like, "Just figure out." He calls them seams, and that where you find those deer. And I mean, even like the deer I killed a couple days ago was an example of, now I had to get to where my tree where I was hunting at. I could have had a lot easier of a hike, but to get to there, to stay undetected, we had to climb 450-foot elevation from the bottom, get up there. And I watched another hunter the one day when we didn't see any deer that just walked, wind blowing through everything, walking out. But at first I was like, man, he blew everything out. But I don't think those deer, they just hold tight. It's super thick, and they just know that, okay, I'm not going to walk out that direction today and have it. And then when the wind had shifted, when I was in the tree, and I went around and ended up killing this deer on the ground, I mean, it was a 200-yard drag. And so it was very easy in comparison to what it can be sometimes in places, and ran into a lot of other people that listen to the podcast and everything else is my deer's in the, in the truck. And, but it was just like, there was people all over, but the deer were still there. It's just, they know how to find those holes in there. And this like one spot, and I didn't know this until I found it, but was just like one of those areas that just held people off of it. And you can almost like map it out. Like when I'm looking at my phone, I'm looking at Spartan Forge, and I'm looking at all these trails and stuff. You can kind of use that to map out kind of how those deer are going to be like holding up in those seams. And it's like, that's like taking, there's macro scouting, and then that's the micro level once you start finding deer and trying to hone in on them.
It's crazy too, like, because again, this is my first time like fully diving in, but there are very specific dead zones where it's just like, there's like no deer activity here.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's a difference of 50, 60, 100 yards.
Yeah.
Like, it's you'll have tons of sign, and you'll just kind of get out of it, and it's like, man, there's like no deer in here. And it's just very like finicky to find those, kind of hot spots and whatnot. But I think it is fascinating you said that, because I feel like people's misconception with deer is like when they get, winded, they just blow out and all just take off running.
No,
I don't think they
not
do that. I think that they know like to stay put. They're obviously aware of what's going on, but like they know when they go taking off running that they're going to be visible to, susceptible to running in front of somebody else.
Yeah, they don't know whether it's bow season or gun season, and they're used to, if it's gun season, they go take off running. Someone's going to be shooting something.
Yeah.
So we learned that a lot from drives. Like when you're putting on the drives, like what you experienced before, there's a lot of times, especially those old deer, that they won't get up until you almost stand on top of them.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how I feel like how they operate, is that they kind of pattern the people, because you take off running, you're exposing yourself, but you stay
and then
nice
Kapow,
and tight.
Larry got shot.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Can you guys hear me just fine?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't hear it
In
myself.
a sense, they behave like rabbits. They hunker down until you flush them.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, I watched it happen yesterday.
Yeah.
Harry and I were hunting, and I had a 100-inch buck come in, and a black bear that was massive came in, and they locked eyes, and that buck didn't move. And then for some reason, the black bear blew out, and that buck watched him blow out and stood still and did not move for at least 10 minutes. Did not, just hunkered down, stayed exactly where he was, and watched until it was clear out of view and did not move like ice. Just totally still. And that was interesting to me, because I thought for sure once that black bear was seen by that buck was going to take off. He didn't move. He just stood there.
Their first instinct as fawns is to lay still.
Yeah.
And I feel like that doesn't leave them.
No.
And like for example, when I was hunting this deer in Ohio, it's all agricultural, real flat. You can see forever. And it was a lot of soybeans in the summertime. And I remember driving down, seeing this deer, and he's 800 yards away. I'm seeing him. I stop the truck, and instead of like bounding off and running away, he just laid down and just disappeared in the beans. And then we drove off, and then parked where we could kind of like keep an eye, and then he just popped right back up. And I'm sure, I mean, obviously he knows the difference in like a truck that's continuing to go versus one that stops. You know, like he's probably been shot at, but
Oh yeah.
I was kind of using that knowledge with even some of the stuff here, because like I was brainstorming with Johnny on like, I feel like these deer have patterned trucks, the noises, because I've experienced this back home in the suburbs. Like I have been patterned by so many bucks over the years. They figured out where I'm parking, how I'm coming in, and they knew every time I was in there. I feel like these deer out here, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they're really conditioned to hearing a truck. You know, they hear it 100 times a day. They hear it coming, and it leaves, and they hear it leave, and they hear it go off in the distance, and they know they're safe. Mm-hmm. But how many times have they heard it where a truck comes in, they hear it slow down, they hear it park, and then all of a sudden they're experiencing hunting pressure? Mm-hmm. You know, I feel like deer just pick up and learn that, especially the older they get, they just experience it more. And so I was brainstorming with Johnny earlier about like, I'm taking where we could park tomorrow is like, we could pull in 10 yards off the road, park in a gravel lot, and walk 150 yards to our tree. And it's like, we're taking a 20-plus minute loop, you know, on some gravel road way back, just taking it so we can, you know, enter through the back door.
Yep.
So they don't hear a truck coming down the road and then stop and it doesn't leave. They know that presence is still there.
Yep.
So that's what I'm trying to take, like the back door and park, you know, way a ways, and then, you know, slip in where like they don't hear that truck come, stop, and not leave. Do y'all think that these deer? I mean, am I wrong on that? Am I thinking right?
You're 100% right.
I mean, just last year with Johnny, I was surprised. He took me to a spot right after I killed that buck, and I was usually when I'm going anywhere with Johnny, it's 3 miles and a long ways in, and there's a lot going on, and it's like, oh, I got this spot here, Bill. I think we're gonna be successful here. And I was like, all right, I'm hiking boots, get all my stuff together, make sure all my gear's right. We're like 150 yards from the road, and he got me. Maybe I shouldn't say that, Johnny, but I won't. I'm not telling anyone where it is. But we get in there 150 yards from the road.
But didn't you forget like 6 things on
Bucks,
the way in?
yeah, we were still. I mean, I think we shouldn't have been hunting that morning. Maybe, if I'm being honest.
There's one story.
We stayed up that night before celebrating that buck.
There's one story that you may hate me for telling it, but to me it is so funny. This is what's fascinating about you.
Oh no.
Just the creature of Bill is that you are extraordinarily intelligent, but I feel like you are so smart that you pay attention to certain things, and then like the easy, like the softballs, you know, the layups just are kind of like sometimes just like way over the head, you know. Like,
I'm sorry, Bill, but that's so accurate.
Because we're at dinner or at lunch today, and in a video, and Bill was telling us this, it's like I was doing math or something, and I'm like in my phone typing it out. I'm like 321 plus 400 and blah, plus this plus 81, and I'm like calculating it up, and Bill goes 12,180, or like it goes 1,211, and it was like he was in the back seat. He like wasn't even half paying attention, and it's like he just spat out this equation like instantly, and I was just like, dude, like, so you can do that. Like, your computing skills are crazy, but then there's
waiting
just
for there to shoot a drop here, Jeff.
there's some stuff that just is like.
Are you talking about that morning we went to go hunt that buck and I forget my license?
No.
Oh.
That? Well, no. So the one I'm talking about is when we were in North Dakota and we were hunting with Garrett.
Oh no.
DIY sportsman.
Come on.
I love this story. And y'all take off, y'all drive, and Garrett drops you off. And then Garrett drives like 30 minutes away. And the story, as I recall, it's probably not totally incorrect, but I'm going to tell it just because it'll be funnier that way. The story I was told, or that I recollect, was that you grabbed your stand, your backpack, like made this big on hike all the way into this piece of property, like hung the stand, climbed the stand, was like hunting. And then Garrett sends a text and was like, hey, Bill, is this your bow in the back of the truck?
I had gotten all the way in there. So what I do with my setup, if anyone has seen a mobile setup, it's pretty involved. But I've been doing it for like 12 years, so I know exactly how everything is supposed to work. I usually put my bow on the top of the mobile setup, so that when I go in, I'm not having to hold my bow unless it's the rut. During the rut, when I'm walking around, I'll have an arrow knocked. Like early season, late season, whatever, bow's on the top. I get in there and I walk into the spot, 30 minutes, just like you said, long walk. I'm getting everything together. I'm up in the stand and my pack is on the, so Joe asked me about it. I have this hunter safety system roll up thing that I use and I attach all my stuff to it. I get up in the tree and then I pull it up with the safety system. Then I reel it in and I'm up in the stand getting ready to roll my thing up, and I'm looking at my pack on the ground. I'm like, all right, everything's good. I'm getting here early, getting ready to start. And then I get that message from Garrett, and I'm like, oh, crap. And I look down at the ground. Sure enough, my bag, my Sitka tool bag is sitting down there, no bow on top.
I just picture the mental image I have in my head, though, is just Bill, like, actively hunting, like, in the zone, just,
getting ready to pull
no
the bow.
Like, imagine a buck coming in, and he's just, like, looking for his bow.
Did you sit?
I sat and watched.
Yeah. Observation.
Took notes. Thankfully didn't see, like, a 160 come by.
I am gonna laugh, Bill, but I can't laugh too bad.
But that's Bill, though. Like
but that's also him.
Yeah.
My dad.
Oh, really?
No, my dad is exactly the same
You
way.
gonna tell him me forgetting my saddle story here?
No, you can tell it.
Oh, all right.
Just this year, I'm busting out of work early, gonna go hike. I had to stand. I had the sticks prepped just so I save some time.
Yep.
And I'm climbing a hill and. I'm thinking, I got the sticks. I'm still gonna put my linemen's around just to be safe to get up. Then, and I'm just cresting the hill, and I went to go into my pouch and the Ninja saddle. And it's like, damn, I got my saddle because they're so lightweight. You do forget they're on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't have it on.
I would equate that, though, as like showing up to a NASCAR race and forgetting your helmet. I showed up and forgot my car.
Forgot the car.
For the keys to the car.
Yeah.
No, but he is. I have a little bit of that, but I'm not as intelligent. He's got the engineering brain, and that's like so, and it's very similar to Bill. So detailed on things, and so has everything dialed. But then there's little things that forgets. You forgot
I
your
think
bow
it is that
before.
hyper focus.
Oh yeah, I forgot my bow before.
Yeah, you've done. Yeah, done.
I get so
that.
tuned up and so jacked up about hunting. Like yesterday night, I was like, all right, I'm ready to get down, go back to camp, enjoy some time with guys. You get a little worn out, and then 30 minutes into being here, I'm like, I can't wait to climb a stand tomorrow. I can't wait to get back in. And then I just start thinking about all of that stuff, and things just inevitably fall by the wayside, like a bow, that you just forget about because you're so like, I just got to get in this stand, new territory. I want to check this buck out, what's in there, blah, 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 blah. Hey, butthead, where's your bow?
Well, I'll tell you a funny thing that could have been bad, but it wasn't. It was October 18th this year. My cousin Mason calls me, and I'm like, why is Mason calling me? It was a Friday, and I thought he was at work, and I forgot he's on 410s now. And I'm like, why is he calling me? It's 8:45 in the morning. It's a cold front. He knows I'm hunting, and I'm like, kind of like getting all worked up. And then all of a sudden I look, I'm like, wait a second, he's hunting. There's only one reason he's calling me at this time is he shot a buck. So I answer. I'm like, hey. He's like, I shot a buck, and I'm like, all right, I'll come help you. I'll get out. And I was so like flustered and excited for him. I'm packing everything up and I'm getting ready to climb down. I put away all my ropes. I was standing on my saddle platform, not attached to the tree at all.
Oh man!
I'm like,
panicking. Yeah.
Because I hate.
And do you go high up? Do you go high?
No, not real. I mean, still 16 feet would hurt.
Yeah.
Skyscraper over here.
Really?
35 feet, easy.
What Lee does?
Oh, he goes so high.
Seriously?
He put a stand up for me. Seriously? What do you mean seriously? How many sticks is your highest stand?
12.
12 sticks?
12 sticks. My highest stand 16 feet.
Yeah.
If I gotta go higher than 16 feet, I'm looking for another tree.
But the reason it was 12 sticks was not because
12 sticks.
I just wanted to be really. It was because I was hunting a ridge, but the only tree I could hunt was at the bottom of this.
He's
creek.
still paying the note on those 12 sticks.
Yeah.
Like 12 sticks?
Yeah.
I carry 4. I always use 3. I sometimes will get away with 2. For me, it's all about cover.
Yeah.
I don't care. But then I understood why he did it because he hung a set for me in Georgia when I was coming out to hunt for Domageddon. and it was up there. Like he had like 7'6", 6'6". It was probably 40 feet at the bottom of my feet. It's like, I'm not going this high. I went up like 3/4 of the way up. But then what happens is in those urban settings, those deer will pick you out
especially late season.
right away.
Yeah.
Like no problem. Like they're all coming in looking right up and like, oh, you're an idiot, and they walk away. I was like, oh crap, I probably should have went all the way to the top of this thing.
Well, they get hunted a lot. So I think again, kind of the zone of like people won't go shallow. They kind of that medium range gets hunted the most. I think the same thing is true with like tree stand height. I think these deer get hunted a lot, and they have experienced people in trees, and most of them are about the same height. So I think sometimes you can trick them by being lower, and sometimes you trick them by being higher. I typically go higher.
Yeah.
But every situation is different. Like I the Ohio deer, I killed him probably 8 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
And it was just because we worked with what the tree gave us. I didn't want to cut any limbs or like change anything because it was a bedding area. And so like we just worked with what the tree gave us and like found the hole in it, and we were not high off the ground at all.
Details matter.
Yeah, for sure. And every, like I said, every situation is different. Every hunting situation is different. I'm always trying to figure out like, and again, this is suburban, rural, Kansas, Pennsylvania, Georgia, wherever. It's like these deer are accustomed to certain things. And if you can figure that out and use it against them, I think that you can really trick them. Even as simple as the truck thing, where it's like, if you can trick them where they don't hear a truck, and in their mind, like, coast is clear, let's go. I was even talking to Johnny about this. It's like, imagine the difference when they hear a truck park, walk in the woods, and they hear rattling, and they hear grunting, brah, brah, and it's like, they're like, come on, really?
Yeah.
But imagine the coast is clear, they hadn't heard that truck, they start hearing grunting and rattling activity in their woods, and they're thinking the coast is clear. Like, they may be thinking like I think they'll associate that completely different.
Well, yeah. I mean, there was a spot earlier this year I was hunting that wasn't too far away from the road, but I was hearing other vehicles. It was just a gravel road that really dead end, and there were some workers that were going back there and stuff, and I'd hear them. I'm like, man, those vehicles are way
You hear them a
louder.
long ways
like,
off. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, and you hear them go, and I'm like, I could tell you where they were at without even knowing where they were at, like where they parked, where they stopped at, because you could hear it. I'm like, I can hear that.
Yeah.
Deers hear all the time. Like, they know exactly. And that made me rethink even how I was parking, even when I had that in consideration to begin with. But I was like, all right, that's a whole different story. And I remember I learned that lesson when I was younger, when my dad used to let me hunt his spots back in the day. It was like,
Oh man, when was that?
a long time.
12.
Yeah. And
Cut
and
the cord, Bill.
he'd be like, he's like, you got to park here to walk in. I'm like, why? I could just drive down this road and park right here. He's like, no, you don't do that.
They're pattern detection systems, and I think people might hear this and be like, "Oh, they hear the truck, they know what's happening." It's like, no, they know what a pattern for safety sounds like, and they know what the pattern of non-safety sounds like. And to that point, one of my favorite stories, this guy that that was kind of my mentor when I first got into the hunting community. His name was Charles Alsheimer. He's a prolific whitetail photographer. Any of the deer and deer hunting magazines for 20 years, all his photos.
Yep.
And he told a story about this hunter or this farmer let him come. He said, yeah, I've got these massive bucks, 3 big bucks, behind this barn. I go out there every morning. I shovel grain, stack hay bales. They sit there and look at me from about 150 yards. As soon as I'm done doing my thing, I get in my truck. I drive back to the house and eat my breakfast. I look out the window. And as soon as I park my truck and go inside, they walk into the grain and the hail, alfalfa hail, and they start eating. And he goes, yeah, go ahead, go out there. I want you to get rid of them because they're eating up the alfalfa. So go ahead and harvest a couple of these bucks. So Charlie goes out there to hunt them. Goes out there that morning, and the farmer doesn't go out there because Charlie's set up.
Yeah.
All the bucks hang off 400 yards. They're sitting there looking at the barn where they would expect to see the farmer. And he sits out there for 3 days and doesn't see a deer come into any kind of range. No, nothing towards there or anything. And he's scratching his head trying to figure out what's going on. So him and the farmer talk about it. And the farmer said, well, I'll go out there tomorrow morning and do my regular chores like I have been doing for 25 years. Charlie gets in a stand. He goes out there the next morning, does his grain, alfalfa hay bales, does all that stuff, goes inside. As soon as he slams the door, the bucks walk out.
Yeah.
They just know what safety looks like.
If
the farmer's not here, then there's something wrong.
That's the same thing in like more of a suburban setting. Is people are like, oh, they're used to human scent. It's like, yeah, they are.
Until they're in the
They
tree.
know what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was explaining this to Pete earlier. It's like, imagine Johnny every morning goes out, or every morning or every evening is out on his back deck, and he's, grilling a burger or whatever, and there's a doe that always comes to his field and can clearly see and smell Johnny. And it's like, imagine he does that every day, and then all of a sudden one day that doe comes out and is smelling Johnny, but he's a little bit closer in her area and he's not in his place. She is going to associate that completely different.
100%.
He turns around, sees a metal militia hat, game over. He got dead deer.
So that's like a misconception in the suburbs, because Pete even asked me, like, do you play the wind? Like 100%. And it's because they can associate the difference of, like, if they see someone on a walking trail, they see someone on their back porch, like, and they're sitting there smelling them, seeing them, identifying where that smell is coming from and that noise and stuff. Like, it's normal. It's the farmer going out there and doing his normal thing. But the second that it's like they're smelling a human, and that person is that, they can't identify the source and where it's coming from, like, it's total different ball game.
Well,
Even the sound of walking. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, if somebody's hiking a trail, they hear that, they stand still, they watch and wait till it fades away.
Yep.
If that walk stops,
Yep.
they're not going to go. They're not going to carry on.
That's
their normal
to
routine.
me what fascinates me about whitetails is you can have such vast variations in environments, but their tendencies, their behaviors, their instincts are so much alike that you can, really use tactics that apply kind of across the board in different places.
Yeah, and not that we really need another example, but just to even add to that a little bit more. When I hunted in Alberta, I went up there for Sitka to do some product testing with Jim Holt Jr., he's incredible hunter, and he has an outfitting business in the bow zone of Alberta. Super cold, quiet, and like his whole philosophy, like when he'd drop you off at your stand in whatever it was, in the morning or at night, he wouldn't stop the side by side. You had to get out at like a rolling and grab it. You had to practice it so that you could do it quietly, and then you didn't move for 10 minutes until you couldn't hear the side by side anymore, and then you'd slowly walk in, because he would ride those fields just to condition them. That's literally the reason why he would do it every day, just to condition them that they would hear that. But if they stopped, it was, any of that kind of stuff, it would or even if we got out and then I just started walking, well, they can hear the footsteps and the side by side. It's like, that's not right, so you had to disassociate that, and it was just really interesting to me to see that. And I do believe that, like, no matter where I've hunted, you've hunted whitetails more places than I have probably, but I would honestly associate this with other animals too, elk, anything else. Like, they have certain things that no matter where you're at, that they do the same. It's just the environment dictates what they exactly are going to do, but they're trying to survive, essentially, is what it comes down to. And now, the one thing I'll say, and Dad, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this too, but in like these big woods environments, now this deer that buck's not going to bed in that same spot every day. He might bed there once a week. He might bed there, it depends on what the food looks like. If you have a ridge that's, a mile of just vast timber, and then you have an oak ridge, well, maybe that's going to create more consistency like a farm field would.
I'm sure time of year too.
Time of year, all that stuff, but they're on there's a lot more wandering that's associated with it, but they still I believe they still go on those tendencies of they have spots. Instead of maybe just one area that they're bedding in, a lot of times they might have 20 of them, but they know those still really well, because that's what else you got to do all day other than survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're out there for their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna. No, I agree with that. If they're in that area, though, they know where their safe zone is, where their safe bedding is, and they are going to be, go to that area where they're going to survive.
And it doesn't always mean that, like, when I say that they go to these different areas, I don't always mean miles away. Like, sometimes it could be 100, 150 yards away. It's just in these different spots, and they might leave a different way to go feed. I had Johnny in scouting with me one spot this year, and he's like, these deer really could kind of go wherever they want. It's just like a lot more wandering that happens. Now, when you add terrain into it, and you add, different vegetation types. Now you can start to create some more patterns to that, because it's almost forcing them in those certain directions of learning how they're using it. And I was actually just going through some footage the other day, cutting up some stuff for Instagram from our scouting camp that we put on every spring. And Johnny was talking about there was this big scrape in this like thermal hub. So in the bottom, all these trails led to this. And he's like, we were talking about stand location. He's like, I want to be able to shoot to this spot here where there's a couple blowdowns to go through there. He's like, every other deer is just going to kind of come down, hit this scrape. That big buck might still hit that scrape, but his way of getting there is, and Johnny is basically a buck. So that,
yeah, he is.
So
He is
like
a white-tailed deer.
he's going to come up through here. He's going to go around that blowdown. He's going to come through here. And it's just like, that's how they move. And it's the more I've picked my setups, and this year was like, I felt like I had a lot more dialed than even last year in some of my areas, because I watched them from the tree do things. And I'm like, okay, I just need to be, 30 yards this way or whatever, because a mature buck is doing something, especially a real mature buck is doing something completely different than even 2, 3, 4, and even 5-year-old deer. You get to a 6, 7-year-old deer, they're doing things completely different than anything else, and it's harder to put those patterns to them.
Yeah, I mean, and on the scrape thing, it's something that's helped me a ton. Is and Johnny really liked this analogy I used to use about Rambo. Like if you drop a bunch of cheeseburgers in the middle of the woods, Rambo's going to run the other way. He's like, that's a trap. Whereas all the other deer people in this case would go in there and grab some free grub. But the deer still wants the buck.
Was that a corn pile analogy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just make sure I'm following.
Or if he goes in there, he'll go in the middle of the night. But what I'm really going at here is with a scrape. The buck wants the primary function of that scrape is to deposit testosterone, rub from the head, tarsal gland, deposit, and then advertise sexual selectiveness. Say, hey, I'm getting into, I'll be rutting soon, or this doe is ready to mate. And it's like a billboard for everyone to come and check in. If that buck wants to use that but not highlight himself, how does he use the predominant wind and cover to be able to still go in and smell that scrape, but not necessarily participate or use it or deposit his own scent? Because he knows that's not now as important as he thought it was 2 or 3 years ago. He just needs to know the deal. So where's that cover, like you talked about, that would allow him to get in there, scent check that scrape, and kind of overcome the urge of having to go in there and rub and do all of the stuff they want to do. And then when you piece that together, then you ask yourself, now how do I get downwind of that little area? And then the hunter, at least for me, my growth as a hunter went from, now how do I train myself to say it's fine that you're not seeing any other deer working that scrape? Because I always wanted to be like, man, I want to go watch them. I want to see that 3 or 4-year-old get in there and get his head in the leaves and deposit and, licking branch and all that stuff. I love that. It's like, now how do I train myself to not be so, and just get used to being like, I'm going to be in this blowdown and this cover where I can't see the scrape, but I know that the smell is traveling here. I'm not going to see deer all day. I'm not going to see stuff all day. But when he comes in here to scent check this, I will see him, and he's the goal. And that was like I had to get myself over that, because you always want to see deer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're not seeing deer, you start getting insecure or whatever, second guessing yourself. Just being able to stick with that has allowed me to get on more mature deer as a result. But I'm not having the fun that I want to have and seeing everything else that's going on at that main scrape. You know what I'm saying?
I think one of the most important traits that, what makes like good hunters is like the ability to be a sponge.
Yeah.
To just like pick up learning things from other people, or just as you progress along, you're constantly learning new things. The why, the big question, like why did he do this? Why is he doing that? Like you're constantly learning every single year. I don't care if you've been hunting whitetails for 5 years, a year, or 50 years. Like at no point do you figure it all out.
No.
Like you are constantly continuing to learn. And to me, like, and I know Johnny's talked about this a lot, but I've always learned that like older deer I've hunted, they've all had very different personalities, and you have to really like figure that out. Like figure out specifics about that deer of why he's doing what. And they've all had different life experiences, just like people. Everyone comes from a different upbringing. Everyone's had different life experiences, but it kind of shapes you into who you are. And it's like it's no different with deer.
Yep.
You know, he may have experienced getting shot at over a scrape when he was younger, or in bait states, he may have, you know, gotten shot at over a corn pile. Like, you know, there's just different like life experiences that a deer can experience from that age when they're really learning who they are before they become a man, that kind of like 1 to 4. And it's like when you get a deer that has just lived that much life, experienced that much stuff, like they're going to behave very differently because their experiences have formed who they are to that point.
Yep.
And it's like they're going to behave. It's a different creature than the 1 to 4 year old. That 5-year-old, but it's almost not even the same. It's species. They act totally.
There's
different.
no hard and fast rules with that. Like
No.
You know, I was learning that this year. I was hunting a buck, and actually my dad came in and scouted with me, and we were in there looking, and we found these scrapes that had these just like big beech branches just twisted up and just like and broken off and stuff. And there was, you know, we found probably 3 scrapes that had the same characteristics. We're like, okay, that's the same buck that is doing that. And so you're able to read that sign. So when I was in there hunting this year, I didn't even have a picture of him. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know if he was still alive, anything like that. But I was hunting that sign, and I saw it was being used again. Had a camera in there. Then after that, and hunted, ended up seeing him. My bow was on the ground.
That was that deer.
That was that deer, and like, cause he had, you know, inline points that would, and this is how I looked at it. Like could get in there and twist up those branches better, and like just create these
The
knots.
antlers had more dexterity.
Yeah, it could create these knots. And then actually, I didn't shoot him. I shot a different deer. But that day when I was going in, I'm pretty sure I was close to him because I got around the side of this cut, and there was a rub that was literally as tall as I was, up like antler points hitting, and then one of those branches was snapped off, and I was like, and I could just smell. I'm like, you know,
Running buck.
Yeah, I'm like, it's him. Like,
Yeah.
I have no idea, but from context clues and seeing what I'm seeing, like that's what I believe is in there. Who knows? He could have been 30 yards away from me when I shot the other one, but I still do believe that he was in there at that point. But being able to recognize it, that's just something that I'm giving that as an example of, like, that's something that deer gave to me as like some clues to look at. Now another deer, you know, a clean looking buck, maybe wide or whatever else, maybe he doesn't leave that same kind of sign, and you're picking up on something else.
Well, to Lee's point, and I think, you know, he said it, and it struck true to me, is the really good hunters they don't have their own ego wrapped up in the learning process. So when someone tells them something, they can quickly learn, and like, because it might violate something that they thought was the case. Then a lot of guys will hear that and say, well, that's not true, or that's not how it works, or whatever. And then they stick to what they've been doing because they might have some bit of success in what they've been doing. Whereas the wise hunters hear that and then they quickly adapt, or at least they put that tool in their bag. And I was just talking, we were just eating breakfast this morning, and my son and I were talking while everyone was there. And we were arguing about, like, you know, something stupid. I don't remember the discussion. But I said, you know, when someone who's older than you or has more experience than you says something about a particular subject, you're wise to just shut up and think about whatever it is they just said, because they've got more life experience and they may learn something. And the example I gave was we were complaining about no Sunday hunting. And I said, for instance, if I'm sitting here complaining about no Sunday hunting, and then Beau Martonik walks in and says, well, actually, Bill, you should think about it X, Y, or Z, or blah, 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 or whatever. Even I don't know how he feels about it. I'm just saying, if he says something to me, now I'm just going to shut up and think about it for a year. Like, I'm not going to argue him. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to stop complaining about no Sunday hunting, and I'm going to think about it for a year and then say, do I really feel this way still? Or did I just get new information that's going to help me out in the final analysis? And am I integrating that information quickly and making a decision based on it? Or am I just being stubborn and saying, nope, Sunday hunting is stupid?
I think being open-minded is super important.
Yeah.
Because I know that is Thomas in here? No, but I know with Thomas, with Cody, probably even Pete would pick this up just in film. We've been a couple days now just hanging out. Is like I am constantly asking Thomas, Cody, Pete, whoever it may be. It may be some guy that's never hunted before in his life, that's just maybe helping film for the day or whatever. I'm constantly asking them, like, their thoughts, like kind of asking them questions. Even if I know the answer, like, it's almost like I like hearing different opinions.
See how they read it.
Yeah, it keeps you open-minded. Maybe they're seeing something differently than what you're seeing. And it's just like, I think it keeps you on your toes of like.
And they don't have the context or blinders that you do too.
Yeah,
They've
that's
been
what I'm
watching
saying.
other hunters, and they've probably picked up some stuff that other hunters that have been successful have. And then they also don't have the context or the distraction or the drive that you do. So now they're able to just give you objective.
Well, yeah, because
input.
what worked in situation A that you've experienced may not work in situation B.
Right.
And you don't want to make a mistake being so stubborn, like in what worked in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
Well, I've used this example before, probably not to you, Lee, but about you, where you were here in Pennsylvania last year. I watched you spend hours talking to both my dad and Johnny, like just asking questions, asking questions, and it's like, you're someone that's a very accomplished hunter. You've killed a lot of really big deer, and it's like, but if you were to listen to that conversation, you would not have known that you'd ever shot a buck in your life, because you were just. And I say that in a positive way,
great.
that you were asking and trying to learn those tendencies and those characteristics. And like, it's even funny when you came here to hunt, and I was like, hey, if you want, I got spots you can go into, and you wanted to learn on your own, but you were asking questions so that you can take that stuff from people that have done it in these areas and apply your own knowledge to it and try to learn through doing that. And I respected that.
I say this all the time. Socrates was the wisest man in Greece because he constantly said he knew nothing. Everyone will come and ask me, say, I don't know anything. He's the wisest guy in Greece. You know what I mean? Like, there's something to that. Like, just act like you don't know anything, absorb all the information. Everyone else, like, we're just one person. So the lessons that you can get from 10 other people, even if they don't know as much of you as you do in one domain, they might know a ton in other domains. It's going to help you where you're trying to focus. So yeah, sponge.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, it's I'm not gonna pretend like that I know much about PA hunting. Like when I came up here and asking all these questions, like I don't know shit about this stuff, to be honest with you. Like it's a totally different environment. But to me, that's what's fun, is like kind of figuring it out. And like this was funny. I think I have talked about this probably previously, but I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and he was like, he hunts Oklahoma. He's like, he's got a 300-acre place he hunts. He's got feeders he's been running, runs no cameras. And he's like, he was telling me how giddy and excited he was to go hunting. He's like, like I just feel like a kid on Christmas. And I remember I told him, I was like, I'm so jealous of you, because I do not feel that anymore. And it's because, when you're targeting, I guess, a specific deer, you're taking out the big mystery of like the unknown. You're hunting a particular buck. And coming up here, like, I wanted the unknown. Yeah, I put some cameras out on some sign and stuff, but it's like, whether I saw a shooter on that camera or not, it was almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
I'm just hunting. I just wanted to find good sign, a good area, and hunt. And it's like, if a 120 walks in front of me, I'm hunting that deer. If a 150 walks in front of me, I'm going to be hunting that deer. It's just like but to me, like, we found a good area. We're going to go in the morning. Honest to God, I've not been this excited to hunt in a long time. And it's just that unknown, that you don't know what could freaking come walking in. You've seen the sign, you know good deer are there, but it's like, you just don't know. And like, that's to me why I came up here. It was like, I'd been missing that.
Or why anyone starts hunting in the first place.
Yeah, it's the unknown.
You allow me to walk the dog on this, all right? Have you guys seen the Mighty Ducks movies?
Of course.
Mighty Ducks 2?
Yeah.
All right. So the analogy I'm going to draw here is when the coach is taking all these kids playing like Olympic level hockey, and they're getting frustrated and they're not getting the results that they want and everything like that. He takes them to like a park to play all the local kids in like Minneapolis or something like that.
I remember that, yeah.
And he said, hey, all these kids are out here because they just want to play hockey. They're not training for the Olympics. They're not the best in the world, but they've got a ton of passion and a ton of drive. They just want to play hockey. Like, they're just thankful they've got a place to go play. And you guys should remember that as you're training for the Olympics. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
I would say Lee here, who's killed more 200s than I'll ever see in my life, or has seen more 180s than I'll ever see. I think it's kind of the same thing. Like, let's just go back to the roots and remind ourselves why we do this and the fun of it, and that hunting should be about. It's not about the kill. It's about the trail and the time and the friends and the relationships that are built along the way. And then, why I put such a priority on having Gunner here is because he's an awesome cook and a good dude, and he's fun having camp, but also like, chorizo bear tacos or dip or whatever. And you walk into this camp and it's like the awesome ambiance. Johnny's built in this amazing place. Everyone's bullshitting, having a good time. Yeah, we're all going to go out and hunt hard tomorrow, but we're more excited about other people's success than we are about our own. Or with someone else, like when Beau texted me big buck down the other day, I was like in the stand just like fist pumping.
Yeah.
And just like you said, like getting back to the basics and understanding why we do all of this in the first place, I think is really prescient, because we do get wrapped up in the game too much or trying to target the one buck or whatever. And it's good to get a reminder why we do all this.
Well, I was
Mighty Ducks too.
after I shot that buck and I was talking to some people like, where are you going next? Where are you going next? And I'm like, I was planning on going to West Virginia and maybe hunt New York, but I'm like, I'm not in any rush. Like I kind of want to. I'm ready I wanted to be sitting there, waiting for that text of like, I got one hit. I need help. I want to drag. Like, I love that going in, and it was cool having Thomas here this week, getting to be a part of my Uncle Mike shooting one, me shooting one, and seeing like this is what our family does: is we all get together, go in and help, and drop everything that you're doing. It was funny. Did you hear both Mason and Uncle Mike were saying that wife and fiancés were saying like, do you have to go like every time someone texts you and says they got a buck down to go help? Like, isn't the rest of your family going to be there?
Is this a game of rhetoric? What do you want me to do here?
Yeah, I do need to go.
Yeah. And that's like, I came up here and it's like, I could have not even hunted.
Yeah.
I could have come up here and hung out for.
You haven't hunted yet, and you've been up here
I
for a few days.
No, I haven't. But I'm excited. Yeah. I'm excited to hunt. But I could have come up here and not even sat in the tree, and just to be a part of the hunting environment. The camaraderie of all is like really all I was needing and wanting.
I loved it coming back here this afternoon. Like, we spent some time in town. I come back here this afternoon. Gunner's cooking amazing food. Everyone's sitting around talking. Cabin is amazing. It's cold outside. We're just in here just freaking hanging out with each other. Like, that, to me, that's my favorite part.
I'll tell you what has been a fun part for me is like the door knocking permission stuff is so stressful. It's not fun to go door knock on random strangers and talk to them about hunting and see.
Or write up a check for $30,000.
That too. That sucks too.
Yeah.
But but it's just stressful. It's like it's exhausting. It's stressful. You get a lot of no's, and then when you do get a yes, that's what makes it worth it. But what I have enjoyed about this is like it's the vast, just like you've already got the yes. Just go. Just search, explore. If you want to hike 10 miles in a day, you can hike 10 miles in a day and not even come close to a property line.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, that's fun.
I can promise you will find a property line.
Yeah.
At some point. That's what struck me, though.
Walk through, there's like a new community built.
I don't know if it was Beau or Kurt or Johnny who said this to me, but it was years ago. So it must have been you or Johnny. But like 5 or 6 years ago, I came out here when I started really mountain buck hunting in PA, in Western PA, 10 years ago. And I cut my teeth and really didn't see anything for like 2 or 3 years, anything of consequence when I was hunting out in Western Maryland. And I was up here doing some of my very first scouting, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, 6 years ago. And I think it was Johnny who said it to me, but he was like, we were talking about like down in Maryland, there's no property access or very difficult to find places. The public's not that big. And I think it was Johnny who said it to me. I've never envisioned or pictured a place where I couldn't just walk out in a backyard and start hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Like where it just wasn't immediately available to me to just have vast amounts, large sections of woods that are just there and available to you, and you can just walk into them. And that's always stuck with me because that's not the experience. I think PA's really done well at, keeping vast areas of land for people to access. Because it's, North Dakota is not like that. Places in the Midwest, even down in the Southeast, you're knocking on doors. You're making it happen in a different way. But it was one of the central tenets with Spartan Forge was I don't want to go, and I've got nothing against these people. I've got nothing against people who make big farms like your Lee and Tiffany's or anything. I'm going to do that. My goal is to do that. I want to have a big farm of my own, so I've got nothing against them. But when I was building this app, I was like, who am I building this app for? And for me, it was for people who are doing it themselves, whether it's knocking on doors or large, vast pieces of public or their own back 1 acre property or whatever. Like that's the customer that I'm thinking about when I'm building this, which is why very early on we did stuff like journaling, property annotation tool, and that type of stuff, because those are the things that people will need when they're trying to do it themselves.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, and this is a shameless plug, 100%. The Lidar that y'all have on Spartan Forge is next level. Like, it's crazy.
Out here, it's amazing.
Out here, it is insane. Like, I've never looked at the Lidar out here, but there's so much, ungulation and just so much elevation and different texture or whatever word I'm looking for. But it's like I clicked on the Lidar, just not really expecting. But you can see, like, there's a little berm where we're hunting, and it's like you can see every detail of it. It's actually fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's like in situations like this, it's super useful.
I run that 95% of the time.
Yeah, the Lidar stuff.
Around here.
I just did a reel the other day in the tree with Harry about like my map setups, and it seems pretty consistent. And if you guys have a different map setup, do it. Like we use like the presets in Spartan Forge, like a radio. Like here's my favorite 3 radio stations. The presets for me are aerial with the specific year. Now that we have the historical with imagery, aerial with property, Lidar with slope angle, and then topo, straight topo. Those are the 3 that I always am running. And then I can quickly go through them and look at everything. But I find a lot of guys when I talk to them who are very serious hunters, which is why I'm interested to hear what you guys, if you guys even use the setups, maybe you don't use them. But if you do, what are like your 3 staples for out here?
Yeah, I'll say mine's almost exactly the same, except for my third one isn't topo, because for me, I leave the topo lines on Lidar.
I see.
That's how I use it, but I'll use a different aerial on the other one that's just really clean. Like I don't have property.
So you could just look at it.
It's just like be able to see that. So those are my 3.
So I might try that sometime then, because I haven't done that.
But Lidar, like my dad was saying, like I use that so.
Oh, wait till you guys see.
Much.
We're calling it the Game of Thrones map, I guess is what we're calling it right now. But we're building a new Lidar layer for next year. It's going to be unbelievable. You guys are going to shit yourselves when you see it. Like, it looks so cool. We're using video game engines and layering and different types of raster maps. But when you pop that Lidar layer, there'll be like, if there's a deciduous forest behind you, there'll be deciduous trees as little transparent symbols. The houses will be 3D. You'll be able to see houses, the trees, the tree type, the water, the direction that the water goes. Who's seen Game of Thrones? Does anyone see the show? I have never seen it.
Oh, man.
Have you seen
Y'all
it?
missed out, yeah.
So the introduction, you know how they show Westeros or whatever it's called,
Yeah.
like the big place?
Yep.
They have it. Looks like a Lidar map, but you can see the houses and everything. But what we're doing with Spartan Forge is it'll be like transparent. So you'll still see all of the undulation, all of the different, but then there'll be a hardwood stand or a pine stand above it that you can see through. So you can still see the ground, but you'll know at the same time that there's pine thickets there, or this is conifers, or this is, this, and then you'll be able to throw stuff over it like sunshade, where you'll be able to see where the sun's hitting if you're doing a late season deer drive. Like, hey, show me all the areas where, if there's 9 hours of sunlight today, show me the areas that hold 8.5 hours of sunlight. And then you'll be able to see the houses, and they'll be transparent. You'll see the water and the way that it runs. You'll see the undulations. It looks, it's going to cost us a ton of money to build, but it looks so cool, and it will be so usable. It will remove 95% of your reasons to use other types of maps, because you're going to know the trees, the types that are there, the ground, what's planted. Another good point of contact will be when there's, how we have an egg layer where you can launch the egg layer.
Yeah.
There'll be little cornfields. There'll be a little alfalfa field.
You saying egg or ag?
I was like, what, you could find where everyone has chickens at?
Yeah.
I do love eggs.
Well, that too. But you'll be able to see all of the types of what's planted. There'll be little symbols for, like, it'll look like little models of it. But it'll show everything underneath it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I like how funny y'all talk up here. We were kind of poking jokes about
Fun
that
at
earlier.
the Yinzers.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Crick.
There's a
Yeah.
we do say crick, but there's a difference between
Johnny's dialed on. Is that a Pittsburgh accent?
Yeah.
Is it?
yeah.
I love
so
the
good.
way that you say the word bucks. Bucks.
Box.
Bucks. Like BAX.
I can't even do it.
Box.
8-point buck. Say it, Johnny. Box.
I love it. It's beautiful.
It's wonderful.
Crick. Y'all say some other stuff weird too, but
Yeah. Well,
Use guys or yinsins.
Use.
Yeah.
Dad, how do you set up your map?
I have the sat with the slope angle and the forced the cuts.
Yeah.
On one of them.
Timber cuts.
the timber
Timber
cuts have
cuts.
been real helpful.
Yeah, and then I only have 2 set up. The other one's Lidar with slope angle.
Yeah.
And the topo lines.
What's been cool is the timber cuts show the year too.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
that's also super helpful.
And then we have historical imagery we're dropping where you'll actually be able to look at them. So even if the forestry hasn't provided the data or it's a private company that's done the logging operation, you'll be able to go back on
see
the
the
historical and see the imagery over the years.
Yeah.
So you can, key on. For me, I don't know, and I'll ask this question. I key in on like 3 to 5 years
Mm-hmm.
on my logging operations, like to go and scout and look. Where are you at on years?
It varies because sometimes they'll come in after 6 or 7 and cut all the scrub tree out and get their seedlings they want to survive
Yeah. Okay.
left. So or herbicide spray. So it varies.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's made it a lot harder
Yeah.
in recent years to go by those ages on the layers because they're coming through and they're herbicide spraying or they're select cutting and then coming through and cutting again.
Well, that's a good start. I mean, don't definitely.
Yeah.
The 3 to 5 is a great start, but don't rule out a 6 or 7 because
Okay.
it may be like a 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
exactly-
Or 8 to 10 or 10 to 12.
It might look that way because of the
Yes.
way that they've managed it
Yes.
after they cut it.
Yeah. So you got to be careful because you may be passing up some
Gotcha.
prime cuts.
Yeah.
That's pretty good info.
Yeah,
That's
there
a
was-
pretty good little golden
There,
nugget.
there was one that I was hunting this year that they cut in 2015 that you would think is almost a brand new cut because they came through and they had sprayed it last year and now it's just starting that regrowth again because they weren't getting the tree types they wanted in there, so they basically started from 0 and went back through. So it was just like, but that's something just to keep in your mind and not ruling out those ones that you see that are older
Yeah.
yet types of cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good reason to have Kenny Kane on the pro staff. He can help you out with those types of things.
Joe, how big was that buck? That big one you killed years back?
170,
How much history do you have with that deer?
5, 6. I mean,
That long?
Yeah, it was definitely confirmed for 4 years. I know it was him, 100%.
From trail cameras
Yeah,
or from trail
cam
cams?
photos. The couple years or year prior to that, I'm pretty sure it's him based off the frame.
Yeah.
But he wasn't starting to get the sticker points or the, from the. But yeah, it was. I definitely had history, but I could never. I always lost them. I only get a couple pictures of them in the summer, and I could never get them hard horned until the year I killed them. And it wasn't I wasn't looking. Wasn't for lack of effort.
Was it just process of elimination?
It definitely was.
Over the
I
years?
knew where he wasn't over the years.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just. I mean, and it's so vast around here that it's there's just not enough cameras to put everywhere to.
Was he closer or farther than you thought he would be once you nailed?
He
nailed
wasn't
down?
as close as I had been looking for him, and he was definitely not as far as I had been looking for. He ended up being like a mile and a half from where I'd film in the summer.
So this isn't the Bill Thompson podcast, but it is the Seek One podcast.
No, go for it.
And I feel like I'm on the B squad of Seek One maybe, so I'm going to ask a question.
C squad, but whatever.
C squad, that's fine. I'll take that. as long as I'm on the bench and I can move up.
Practice
So
team.
take me through and I don't run podcasts, so I feel like I'm asking a question now, like I'm Beau or Lee or something like that. But take me through the feeling surrounding killing an animal. I've never had an animal for 5 or 6 years, like maybe 2 years, but there has to be some type of like you get there and now you're like, now what do I do? Or you get there and you're like, this is over. I'll never chase this deer again. Or you get there and it's like, was there some not negative feelings, but you've almost ended an era with an old friend? I'm not trying to say he's like a best friend or something
No.
like that, but I'm trying to say you definitely were hyper focused on finding this one buck,
Mm-hmm.
and you spent a lot of time and resources doing it, and then it's just over in a flash.
You're
Like,
hitting the nail on the head here because I'm fascinated to hear this answer.
Can you take me through that if you don't mind?
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was such a great feeling of gratitude
Yeah.
that, and then in a sense, so it was like, yeah, there's just going to be this void for the years coming up. Is like,
Yeah.
how do you got to go and find that next one that gets you pumped up and gives you that challenge, and a progression of a hunter. When I first started out, you're happy to shoot anything just to fill your tag, eat, harvest the animal, and then you slowly start challenging yourself, and you're looking for something a little bit bigger, something a little smarter, and when you get to these age classes of a deer, I mean, that's the ultimate challenge is trying to figure these guys out.
Yeah.
Early on when he was 3-year-old, 4-year-old, yeah, I tried to find him, but it was, okay, yeah, he's going to be a nice buck. But when he got to the age where, well, even a year before, I mean, I was so down on myself that I couldn't find him.
Yeah.
And then
How big was he the year before?
I don't know. Never found his sheds, but I would guess. And when I had film of him, it was end of June, beginning of July. So
Okay.
he was still a lot of growth yet. But I feel that the year before was probably his biggest year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I know I don't have any hard.
So you think like pushing 180s, 190s?
I would say, yeah, very possible. Because definitely in the mid 170s. If I would say if I was to make an educated guess.
Yeah. That's
So
insane.
so when you killed that deer, I mean the obvious, which I've felt it extensively, is like the void. Like you've kind of it's almost like when that particular deer is what has fueled your passion for so many years, and then it's gone. And Bill kind of said, like you said, not like you're saying goodbye to an old friend or a good friend, but that's actually what it is. Like
Yeah.
I just went through this, and I also think the older you get, the more you appreciate life. And I'm 34. It's not like I'm crazy old, but I have enough. Like I've just experienced enough things dying, I guess, that you you get older, you just like it means a little more every time. Like it's when you're young, you're walking around the woods shooting little birds and squirrels and just for the sake of shooting something, and it's pretty heartless. But then like even today, I would never go just like shoot a random bird in my, with a BB gun, and I'd feel terrible if I did. But I feel like the older you get, and probably also in the progression of a hunter, like you're saying, you just respect and appreciate the animals more. But did you ever experience like sadness, like deep sadness, or
yeah? I mean, there's that. You just ended. This deer survived for so long. The hunting pressure is insane during the rifle season, especially in the area that I killed him in. Archery pressure wasn't so bad, but this deer has survived so many years.
Yeah.
It's just then, there was a sense of sadness that
you took it away from him?
I took that away from him.
But the flip side of that is I always think of the opposite is either he gets shot by a rifle, hit by a car, chased down by coyotes.
Well, yeah, no.
So at least you get to end that relationship with him. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's part of the conservation. I mean, he was where I was hunting him. There was no other bucks that would even come in that area. I mean, he was the bully of the area, basically.
Wow.
I mean, I would sit there and there was one other buck that I did see, and actually, that buck is still alive, and I'm hoping that's one of my target bucks this year. But anyways,
put him on the wall next to
But I mean, I guess in order to control the genetics or to keep that, bring that one out of the herd, I don't know, but.
But what I will say about when you were hunting that specific deer, like I felt like even just watching you, like he taught you so much about like just how small of an area that deer even lived in compared to like you think of like when you don't see them, they're just gone, and like it didn't. Once you've located where he was at after summer range, he never left that area for 3 months, the 2.5 months. Even during the rut, it was like the does just came to him, which was really interesting to watch, because just watch him be on it like that close. And
Every really big deer that I've chased has had small ranges. Well, I take that back. Sometimes their range is very large, like from area A to area B could be a long ways away, but where they're spending time in those places is very small. So a deer could move a quarter mile, he could move 5 miles, but where he ends up, he is spending his time in a very small place. Like I've never seen it, because I think that's why they get killed, is when they're just meandering around, like, and have big ranges. Like I think when they really are like dialed and very just like very pointed on, kind of honed in, I guess is what I'm saying, on where they want to spend time, like that's what keeps them alive for so long.
Are you seeing that more so during the rut, or just, or, I mean, what phase of the?
So the rut is I think they still have that in them, where they're, maybe not as dumb. Like I don't think any of the real big ones that I've hunted, I don't think you could just rattle them in or cron them in. Like I think they were a little more standoffish. They were most always loners, especially in the summer. Like they weren't bachelor grouped up with a bunch of other bucks. Like they always had sort of lonish type temperaments, just kind of like more secluded lives. But I think in the rut, yeah, they would still, get stupid and travel and run. But I almost think that they're more calculated than like some 3-4 year old,
Which is why they live that long.
Yeah, so I definitely think that they do get silly, and they do start to run around and chase it. But I think they are still more calculated, and just don't slip up near as much. But it seems like outside of that, spring, summer, and then late season, like they're almost hanging in really tight places. And it's just because and I'll tell you this story about this one in Ohio, Beau, but this buck had a little tiny place that he was spending. He probably spent his whole September to middle of October there, and it was his confidence place. Like it's 100% what kept him alive during that part of the season. And it was like, I think when he was in there, he was like, "You can't touch me. I'm so intimate with this small place. I've got all my bases covered. Like I'm untouchable." And I think that's what killed that deer, because I was able to put a plan on him that kind of used his confidence of that little tiny intimate place against him.
You got past his security system of his house, everything you got in the back window, and you were sitting there in his living room when he came.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to hear you say that, because this is so vast, and they have so many places they could go, but they still find these little pockets that they just like spend a lot of time in.
In the military,
those deer are hard to kill.
In the military, we do, after a operation, like we'll go in and kill a bunch of people in the house. We do sensitive site exploitation afterwards. So we go in, we stay in the house for a day, try to usually keep it under a day. We go through all of their DVDs, their hard drives, their equipment, how the bills, everything, to try to peel it all back and understand more about how they operated their terrorist network, logistics network, or whatever. And I use that term with deer. If I've been targeting a big buck, or I know where he spent time or whatever, or even when I don't have permission, I might knock on the door and say, "Look, I just killed that buck that I was trying to hunt back here. I'd just like to go back and look where he lived." And a lot of times they'll say yes to that.
I was just going to bring that up.
I was just wondering, what did you learn from the sensitive site exploitation of this
the
buck?
day after I went back in, starting to try to find the sheds, because I could never find the sheds either.
And that drove
the
him
day
nuts.
after you killed him, you went looking for his sheds?
Yes.
That's what it takes, people.
Yeah.
People listening to the
100%.
podcast right
Because
now.
I wanted to find out.
He's still looking for
where
him.
I am.
I know.
But there was that buck that I'm hunting now that was probably a 3-year-old when I killed this buck. He was the only buck that I would film with this buck. They'd be together.
You mentioned him last year at the mountain buck camp when we were scouting together.
And he was distinguishable because he always has a weak left side for whatever reason.
Huh.
His one, and he's real wide. And but I started finding all his sheds
the next day,
and I could never find his sheds either. And I found and then the following year, I hunted this other buck and went into this area where I killed this, stickers.
Yeah.
And here I find this other buck's sheds again. So now I'm finding his sheds there, and I'm hunting him in there, but I haven't caught up with him yet. I've got some pictures. Last year I got some pictures with him. This year, I'm hoping I got him dialed in, and to end the error on this one
That's
as
awesome.
well. But it's
The next day is such a flex. it's, like, it's like the next day you're like,
Well, I
your
get
wife
it.
must be a saint.
No, I get it. 'Cause you discovered his lair, and you obviously didn't want to go in there a lot.
no.
So once the deed was done, I get it. You wanted to go in there and finally be able to kind of explore his
3
his
days would have
place.
worked, but
Because
the
I was-
next day is just such a flex.
It was late the next day.
Oh,
I was
well,
recovering
God
from
bless
the
you. You waited.
celebration.
You waited.
Yeah, I was recovering
Let's
from
get
the
breakfast out of the
celebration.
way, honey.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna head right back to where I killed this guy.
But that, to me, that's the addiction right
It
there.
is.
That chess game.
And that's what we talked about in the beginning. Most people aren't willing to do that.
See, to me, that's what's always driven me is like the mano y mano. Like, I'm gonna figure you out, and it just has driven me mad, and it just always has. And that I'll kind of get to what I was telling you about with like this sorrow part. I had a deer that I just killed this year. I had 4 years of history with him, and I didn't realize it until after, but like I've never been more close to a deer in my life, and I have never felt more guilt and sorrow in my life than I did killing that deer, because I felt so much guilt that like he survived so much. He survived getting sick. He survived, I think, getting hit by a car. He survived avoiding other hunters, and it's like he'd still be out there if I didn't kill him.
Mhm.
And I felt like being vulnerable for a second, I was like crying at night, like
Wow.
couldn't sleep, in tears, because I was like so sad, like so distraught that this buck that had been such a big part of my life for 4 years is gone, and it was because of me. It's because like the love for the deer, and it's that that deer fueled my passion, like to the core, was the gas in my engine for 4 years, and it was gone. And I felt the void,
Mhm.
but I also felt this like tremendous sorrow that I'd never experienced before in my life, and I had to kind of like process and like interpret that, because I just had never like experienced that.
Mhm.
And this deer in Ohio was bigger than that one, but I didn't have that connection. Like I was obviously connected, like I was all in, and like I was obsessed with that deer, but there's just certain ones out there that like are the one. And it's like I don't think I'll ever be as close to another deer in my life as this one that from Georgia at home for the last 4 years. You can't replicate that. But my hope is that like anybody that gets into whitetail hunting, and especially that gets serious about whitetail hunting, experiences that at some point in their life with a multi-year journey. Because when that happens, when like that chapter's closed, it's impossible to experience that like elsewhere.
Mhm.
It's nothing you can describe to give it justice. It's like something you just have to experience. So
It's almost like going to war with a opponent that you have respect for.
Yeah.
Like he brought out the best in me, and now he's dead. Like I survived, he didn't.
Mhm.
But you have this like
Respect.
a respect,
Yeah.
the
right?
respect is what
Yeah.
it boils down
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And it's just, I said it the other day actually when we were doing our interviews with Thomas. I wasn't saying this is a hard and fast rule. I was just speaking from my own experience, which is in the end all we can do if we're being responsible. Is there's 3 things in life, where I felt like I wasn't the best at them, but I felt like they brought out the best in me, which was being a soldier, being a whitetail hunter, and now running Spartan Forge, where it's a how can I put this without sounding contrived? I think I'd quoted a Greek general who said that war is a harsh taskmaster, and what I meant by that was, if everyone knew everything about everyone else, no one would have to go to war. Like if we knew the capacity of the Chinese military, or if they knew our capacity, then they would say, we're just going to do what they say because we would lose in a force-on-force conflict with them. And when I look at white-tailed deer GPS data, I say the same thing. I'm like, man, these guys are so sneaky when you're looking at these 5, 6, 7-year-old bucks. Like, you you're crazy even to try to go after it. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, 5-6 years chasing this buck, the odds are so stacked against you that it is almost an exercise in madness to say, I'm still going.
Yeah.
I'm still going to go do it. But the reason I say all of that is because whitetail hunting and running Spartan Forge has been a harsh taskmaster for me as well, in that it's bringing out the best in me. It forces me to do things I otherwise wouldn't, but it also the odds are just so stacked against you whenever you try to do these things at a very high level. Like if someone had told me what it took to start Spartan Forge 5 or 6 years ago, probably been like, I'm not gonna be able to do this, or this isn't gonna work. Or if someone's gonna say you're gonna go to war 8 times, I probably would have been like, this is probably not a great course to go down. Like I'm probably gonna end up dead or somewhere. But ultimately it's about the getting there and not the there.
You know what's really funny about you saying that? Thomas and I were just talking about that with like businesses and everything, and I even said that with like the podcast. I was like, when I started, if I would have thought of like all the things and how many other people would start podcasts, never would think that I'd be able to do that for a living. But I think a lot of like people that, whether it's in business, and honestly, it really relates to deer hunting too. It's almost like you're being unrealistic. You have kind of this like blind hope and you just figure it out along the way, but you don't really think through all the details first and foremost. I mean, I think of Lee as an example of that. Like say Kimbo last year, it's like, I remember talking to you at the beginning, like I'm thinking that's going to be pretty difficult to get on that deer, of the facts that you had at that point. But you still had that belief that you could do it, and you tackled those things as they come a long way. Same thing with Spartan Forge. It's like, and I think it takes that a little bit in a whitetail hunter, this dreamer's mindset of things. Without, if you look at say my dad with stickers, it's like the reality of him actually shooting that deer is probably pretty low of anybody being able to target that deer and shoot him. But the fact that he believed that he could and just kept going through it, and then a hurdle would come up, figuring out how to get across that, and then getting to that point. And I think that takes a different mindset versus, if Bill, you were to come to me and you're like, there's this buck I'm chasing, and then you told me some situations and I was like, well, there's a lot of people there. He's probably going to shot in gun season, so I doubt he's going to make it till next year. And you start having these, those people aren't ever going to, do those great things consistently.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying war and whitetails have been harsh taskmasters for me. But it's almost the ignorance that fuels you.
Yeah.
Like if you knew how difficult this was going to be, you might not do it. So it's almost that ignorance that allows you to propel forward, which, coming up from the Spartan Forge C Squad to B Squad.
Yeah, you moved up. That was a good question.
Hold on, I got 3 now. I got my third one.
Maybe you're B plus after this.
Cut me off at any time, feel free. But
we will.
Another thing I want to hear about you can't cut me off. But by the way, whenever you sent me the first video of Kimbo last year, it was like in June or July when you got him in the field.
It would have probably been August.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that when I was in the back of the semi at that point?
No. He's in the helicopter.
Oh, okay. All right.
But he sent me that video. My son and I were driving out to the cabin. And I looked at I looked at Liam and said, he's going to kill that deer. So that's the difference between Beau and I. So, oh yeah, that leads me to my next question, and it's something I wanted.
Before you get into that,
yeah.
Having that positive attitude, and you said that this the vibe that we have up here, everybody sharing information, supporting, and without Beau's support, without Rhonda's support, my wife, we would. I don't know if I would have had the mindset to continue. You have the belief, you got to see it, but there's a lot of dead time. There's a lot of downtime as far as disappointment in there, where you don't see a deer for days.
Yeah.
Or and it's just like you start second guessing yourself. And, am I doing the right thing here? And it's just the positive reinforcement.
He didn't want to talk to me because I was being so. Towards the end, towards the last few days there, and he wasn't seeing any deer, and he had seen them twice up at that point into the season, and he's He's like, I'm getting down days. I'm shooting whatever. He's like, he had that mindset. I was like, no. I said, you need to focus on it. And he's like, don't tell me what to do.
I'm your dad.
Yeah, he was like getting like how I would be as a kid, getting defensive towards him as my dad. Yeah, he was like the kid and I was the father. And I felt empowered at that point.
Well, that makes him a good father.
And even my mom was like that with him. It's like, you gotta kill that deer. Like that's your deer. Like you need to focus on it. And he's like, "Brr."
But that also is a great envoy to my next question. And I'll do more quotes here as I lead into these questions because I feel like it adds ambiance to the podcast. Thank you.
Very nice.
But I spent a lot of time reading Marcus Aurelius, the old Stoic. And the thing that I took from him, or like the thing that I apply most from him, is that we can't control what happens to the world. When I was a kid, I used to have to go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings with my mom. She was a recovering alcoholic. They'd say the serenity prayer in the beginning of it, which was, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, but then most importantly, the wisdom to know the difference between the two. In other words, if there's something that I can't change that bothers me, and this has really been a gift for me from childhood. If I can't change it, it rolls off my back like water off a duck. Like my wife will go nuts driving herself up a wall about things she can't control. And it can be the biggest thing in the world. If the situation presents itself and I can't control it, I don't care anymore. I totally disengage. And it even bothers people, like people who are really close to me. Be like, but what? We got to do something. It's like, we can't do anything. I'm moving on. I'm going to go focus on the thing I can change. And I think it's just being a child of an addict that, I'm not trying to play the smallest violin in the world here. I'm just saying she could fly off the handle and leave for a week. I have no control over it. There's nothing I can do about it other than encourage her when she came back, try to get on the horse again, move out. And it just built like a resilience in me from an early age, where if I can't control something, it doesn't bother me. And I think even is my son here, would you say that is the case? Like if I can't control it, I move on. And every time, like no problem. And I read a lot of Marcus Aurelius, and Marcus Aurelius' thing was, we can't control the world. The only thing that we can control is our reaction to the world. So when things are bad, not looking good, the chips are down or whatever, you can't change that. But the only thing you have ultimate control over is your own domicile, which is your body, your temple. And you can regulate your emotions and how you react to those things. And if you're able to do that, you'll have a peace and an inner strength that most people will never experience. Leads me to my question.
Took a long way to get there, but
I wanted to flesh the question out so that people knew why I was asking it.
No.
Which leads me to my next question is resilience. I find, and we were just talking about, Beau and Lee and I were talking about this last night, and I actually thought about it as I was going to bed. I thought about it this morning when I was doing my devotions. Resilience is a fickle thing where you're in the woods, you're not seeing the deer, it's not going well. People may be negative, people may be positive. It doesn't matter. It's you that has to be out there for 12 hours a day for 3 weeks. Whatever it takes to get it done, you're going to get it done. You have this goal. You're striving towards it. Walk me through how you try to make yourself resilient, either successfully or unsuccessfully, or what are the things that you look to? And really, this isn't about whitetail hunting. It can be about anything in life. Like how do you we all have people that are going through things, and you try to help them with resilience. But in the frame of whitetail hunting specifically, because I find myself going through it, we have friends who we talk about, they're not having the success that other people are having. They get down on themselves, they check out, or they stop hunting altogether. I've said a lot. What is your resilience when it comes to whitetail hunting? Like, or is that a problem for you, or is it something you still work through? And I'd like everyone to talk about this.
I think my wife is my biggest supporter.
Yeah.
She gives me, she's always, hey, you got to believe it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, gets me in that mindset. And just, giving me that drive. I mean, I have the drive naturally, but to continue down that path and not I don't want to say settle for something else, but you kind of want to just to end. I'll pick up on this again next year.
Yeah.
Tag out and we'll pick them up next year and try to figure.
Do you have methods for that, or like thoughts that you have, or things? I'll tell you an example. What I do is I'll step away from hunting for 2 days. That's all it takes for me. Like I'll be down, the fifth night, and I'm like, I'm not seeing anything hunting. I don't want to do this anymore. For me, 24 to 48 hours, I'm itching to climb up a tree. Like,
I
so that's
wish
kind of a little
I wish
thing
I could
for
give
me.
myself that break. I might sleep in a couple mornings
Okay,
and just go in later, and instead of dark to dark sits, or
that's a method for you then.
yeah, or I love to get on the ground.
I was just gonna say
Yeah.
That
Change it up.
changes it up. It presents a new sense of hope for me.
A new style.
Yeah, well, no, it's not a new style. I've been more successful probably on the ground than I have been in it.
I have recently as well. Yeah.
The only reason I've been, sitting in a tree more over the years is you can judge the animal better. Based off my goals. I want to shoot a mature deer that has something that I'm going to be happy with. We're on the ground, they're coming charging in straight at you most of the time.
Yeah.
And you're just going off of the frame, and you're not 100% positive it's the buck you're after, and a lot of times it isn't. I was telling Thomas a story today. I got the sheds of this buck. It's I got 4 years of sheds over. I was hunting for another 5-6 years, and he ended up dying of probably old age. I did get a confirmation picture of him. It was him dead, but anyways. I shot that buck 3 different times.
Dang.
But it wasn't him.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
No. I got up to him, and yeah, it
It
wasn't
wasn't him.
Wow.
And all 3 of them were off the ground.
Wow.
It just in the heat of the moment, you see
Yeah.
you see it, and you want to believe it's him. He's coming in.
Yeah.
Concentrate on the shot, execute the shot.
Yeah, the judgment window's a lot smaller.
Yes.
I think one of the first podcasts I ever listened to you do was before we knew each other, but it's one of my favorites, is you talking about blind grunting through thick cover, and things just pop out in front of you, and you just go to work. I started doing that before I ever knew you guys because of that podcast. And that buck I took on the ground, my last 2 bucks out in Virginia were taken off the ground, where the plan falls apart, and you just, so that buck's due to you, maybe, when we think about it that way.
Hear.
the outside looking in, like with him on that resilient side of it, like I see there's 2 things that I feel like from the outside, just knowing him well enough, that I think that pulls him out of those ruts. Not only the external help of good people being around you and motivating you, but I think the ground game, I was going to say 100%, because I feel like it just changes that. It just gives you that fresh perspective, like you said. But also, I just feel like the amount of prep that he has, like that you can fall back on. Like sometimes you get down these, and I hear it from him. Like when we're talking about something, you might be in on this, and you get so far down this rabbit hole. There's all this other stuff about this deer, this lane, but you start going down. You get so far deep down in the basement, it's hard to get yourself back up. And then I don't know what triggers you to get that reset, but once you do, then it's like, all right, I already know a lot of this other stuff, and it seems like you're able to pull it back together.
Yeah, well, I think it's the fatigue, your mind. You're low in sleep. You're sitting there, days on end, and I think it's just fatigue, and maybe I need to take a day or 2 off completely.
Well, I get so
I think
itchy
it'd drive you
by-
crazy.
I get so itchy by day 1 that
I don't think you could.
yeah.
I think that
I don't know if I could
if
either.
it's anything like I don't see you being able to just like have a day where you're just not doing something for that deer.
And the Sunday hunting thing here in Pennsylvania.
It forces you.
I love. I shouldn't say I love not hunting Sunday, but it forces me to take that break.
Yeah.
But this morning when I woke up and my thermometer's at 19 degrees, I
bet
wanted to
that's
be
tough.
out there.
Yeah, yeah.
And here's the funny part of it. The day I shot stickers was a Sunday given to us to hunt
Really?
in archery.
Yeah. We get one Sunday
In
a
archery.
year in archery. Yeah.
Yep, and that was
Wow.
that Sunday.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me it's weird. Like I get almost probably mentally unwell at times chasing deer because it's just it's so draining, and you can go to some dark places, and like I've been in some places where I wanted to smash my bow on the ground and just quit hunting, and luckily I had friends that like basically talked me out of it. They're like, you can't like you love this too much. I know you don't see that right now,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't. And so like I'm glad I've got good friends that like have in those dark times where you want to just quit
Mm-hmm.
to kind of pull me out of that place. But for me, like I haven't really found that balance of like the Sunday thing is actually like from what you're saying, like it forces you to take a day.
Yep.
That's actually I kind of like that, to be honest, because there's times where, at least for me, like it's been every day until the deed's done, and there's no, like, you just, even if it's a little win for the day, like I just can't sit still.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's done, I rest. Like when it's done, I'm talking like the tank is on E. It's empty. And like I will literally take 2-3 days and I won't talk to anybody. Like I will just like literally hit a major reset of just like rest, doing nothing, like just trying to kind of like be away and sort of like, recharge the battery. Because if you don't, that's where I think you get burnout, and then you're not having fun anymore. You're not enjoying it.
No.
Like that's kind of a dance and a balance you got to figure out as a serious whitetail hunter. Is like don't go past that breaking point of like burnout. You hate it because I've been there and it sucks.
Yeah, and then if you have one target buck and it doesn't work out, it is very. I mean, exactly what you're saying. You're so down. There's no celebration.
You want to quit. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you learned a lot of where not to be, or what you did wrong for the next season. But it's just so long in between that there's a lot of time that it's a dark place. It can be a dark place.
Well, we've been talking for a long time, and
Hold on, did you go through your resilience?
I don't have I don't have any sort of process to resilience whatsoever.
What about you, Beau? Nothing to learn from you two?
Well,
not really. I think.
Mine honestly it's the support system. Like I said, I there's certain people I can call or talk to that I know I'm going to get.
We've you and I have talked. Yeah,
you've helped me through some stuff last year.
Well, you helped me too.
Johnny always helps me through.
Johnny is the one that helps me stop feeling bad for myself. When his responses are normally short and sweet. That says, "Don't cry over spilled milk," and and for some reason it just like comforts me.
It
I'm
works.
like, you know what? Yeah,
I just talked to Johnny about deer.
Yeah.
And then it starts firing me up. I'm like, now I need to get back in the woods.
So there's that, talking to other people, and then sometimes it's, for me, I like the whole taking a day off thing. I can't really do that, but sleeping in just a little bit just to get more rest does help. So like during the rut when we're going, day after day after day, all day sits, I've looked at all the whitetails I've killed. I've never killed anything at first light. So I was like, if I'm going to get some extra sleep, it's going to be then, and I'll hike in. And that helps me. Like if I get good sleep and I'm eating good, and like that helps so much to be able to give me that reset that I need. But
I've never killed first light either.
There are times like last year I felt like I was just grinding, and I was totally wore out. But
That's when you start making mistakes too.
Yeah,
and that's why I just take a day.
Yeah. No, I like your method. I just haven't. I can't say I've actually done that, but I should start.
And now it's only happened for me maybe 3 or 4 times in my hunting career where I actually take that day, because generally I'll just push through it. But
well, when the state makes you do it,
yeah,
I actually like that. It's weird, but I
don't like
that.
it. But
I know you don't, but
it's good for family life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good for family life when Dad's killed his buck and is no longer willing to kill anybody within a 200-foot radius because they're talking about, oh, did you get your big buck? Did you catch any deer? I'm gonna bleed you where you stand, sir.
Anyways,
you guys don't have friends like that? You don't hunt, and then they mock you about hunting. You guys don't have any of those? Oh, I have a ton of people that
I'd hate that when I go to work. This is the last thing, because I'm really gonna pee my pants. But
same.
I go to work and I get back from vacation. I'd be elk hunting. For the first 3 years of elk hunting, I didn't kill an elk when I go out there. I come back, everybody be like, "Did you get your elk?" I'm like, "No," and they'd be like, weren't you gone for like 2 weeks? Yeah, yes, I was.
No, don't you know that when you're driving in the road,
Yeah.
put headlights on yourself and they'll run into you. I will kill you. You have no idea the road that you're going down right now. I will end you for that.
The season's early and you're angry already.
Yeah, no, I just people that are like flippant about hunting. Hunting to me is a spiritual, prehistoric, like it speaks to a very deep place in me. I take it very seriously. I love it with every fiber of my being. So when people get flippant when they're buying their steaks at Giant, giving me a heart, oh, my wife hit a big one with a car a week ago. I'm not sure that's not the only big one she got hit with last week. Keep going, buddy.
Goodness.
Well,
you know,
one podcast or the East
you
East
know,
West one?
Adrian, her like when we first started dating, you know, we go hunting all the time.
Yeah.
And she literally thought that you go hunt and you kill something and then that's it. And she went like confided in one of her friends, was like, hey, is Lee like really bad at hunting? Like he goes a lot and he's not always like, he never really kills so much. And they were like, they had to explain to her like, no, like, you know, it's not like you're just going to hunt and like the first thing that walks out you shoot. Like sometimes you are chasing a particular one and it's really hard to like,
Or a class of one.
yeah. And it's so that's
And that's what makes
Yeah.
you happy. I mean, it's whatever makes somebody happy.
I think it would make
Yeah, for
everyone
sure.
happy if they tried it.
Yeah, I think so too.
know what's gonna make me happy?
Ending this podcast so you can wee-wee.
Yes.
we'll wrap it up. We've been going for a while and I still want to do one with you for your podcast and we'll tell some stories over there. It's going to fascinate y'all when I tell y'all about this deer. It really will. Like just we'll save it for your podcast.
Okay.
Dude, obviously, you know, and everybody in this room, like, thank y'all for letting me come up and be a part of this group. Like, it's a very special thing. There's a lot of deep heritage here. It's some very tight bonds, and I'm like, I feel like a kid in Christmas. Like, I'm so excited to go hunt tomorrow.
This is my favorite. I would encourage everyone to listen to this. If they don't have a deer camp, start one.
Yeah.
Like, start it. Just get a couple buddies
like
together.
Anything. Yeah. It's just
Like, it's just such a great. Like, we don't have. I'll stop. 30 seconds. We don't have initiation groups for men anymore. There used to be Elks clubs. There used to be the military was a big thing. There used to be the Elks Lodge or the Shriners or the whatever. Name your men's group, where guys would get together, shoot the shit, make fun of each other, tell dick jokes, like all of that stuff. And then you got to watch someone like my son become a man. And then him get initiated into it and be brought into it and push the culture forward, which I think is what Beau and I's common interest is around everything that we're trying to do. Make deer camp great again. You know, the video that we're trying to produce now with Sitka is letting people know that there's meaning and there's culture waiting and that you just have to go out there and grab it by the horns. And you can experience it and you can create something great, lasting memories with people that you love and do something that's meaningful, that's very deeply rooted in our evolution. And that can be very self-fulfilling and fun, whether it's 2 weeks with your buddies during rifle season or it's the whole season with bow hunting. Just try it, and you'll love it. And that would be my
And for
last.
deer camp, you don't got to go and buy a camp. You can do an Airbnb.
Yeah, you can do
get
whatever.
a group of guys until you
do a weekend deal.
Well, what I did with guys back, military guys back in the day, up until 2016, was we would camp up in Green Ridge State Forest, and we weren't allowed to eat till the first deer died. We'd go 2 or 3 days without eating.
We'd be starving.
And then
Actually, no. Beau supplied. We'd be.
Yeah. And
If
then
we were relying on
we'd
you.
crack the beers and have a good time, and it really brought us together. And we did it out of tents, you know. So you can do it however you
Just
need to.
kidding,
Just get the
buddy.
culture back. You're not hurting my feelings.
He didn't hear ya.
Get the culture going. Get it back.
Yeah.
Make a deer camp. Make
Make
it
hunting
great.
great again.
Make deer camp great again.
Make deer
Make
camp great again.
the deer camp great again. I walked in here. What a great deer camp. Other deer camps made in China. Not great. Not great. This camp, great. I said it when I walked in here. So many great deer camps. Make your own deer camp, people.
It's also cool to.
I thought you were just gonna ignore that great talk there.
It's also cool. I am, but it's also not actually. But I'm just trying to wrap things up. It's also cool just to see like the comparisons to what I've experienced with deer to what y'all have experienced with deer. Vastly like opposite and total ends of the spectrum, but a lot of similar behaviors and different similar strategies, things like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. He can ignore my Donald Trump all he wants to. It's not going away.
no, it's a good.
They're
impression.
eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Let's eat deer and deer.
They're eating the flowers.
Eat more
You
deer.
need to kill them, hunt them. Anyways,
Thanks, guys.
yeah, appreciate y'all listening. That was good.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
thanks.
time. And y'all go download Spartan Forge. It really is a good app. Y'all send Bill some DMs and he'll answer you
For now.
for now. Go check out Beau's podcast, East Meets West, where we're going to do the next podcast telling some stories. And all right, we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.